Status is a story the weak tell themselves. When I say status is a story the weak tell themselves, I am pointing at the psychological mechanism behind status, not just the surface behavior. Let's unfold it. Status exists only in the mind. Status is not a physical thing. You cannot touch it. You cannot measure it like weight or height. What actually exists is a car, a job title, a bank balance, a number of followers. But status is the interpretation people attach to these things. The mind says, this person must be important. This person must be ahead of me. People must respect him. That interpretation becomes status. So, status is not reality, it is a narrative. A story is something the mind constructs and believes. For example, a man buys a 25 lakh car. Objectively, what happened? A machine changed ownership. But the mind immediately writes a story. He is doing well. He must be successful. People will respect him. None of these facts are provable. They are psychological projections. That is why I call it a story. When I say the weak tell themselves, here weakness does not mean physically weak. It means psychologically dependent on external validation. A person who feels internally empty needs signals from the outside to feel valuable. So they constantly look for admiration, recognition, validation, social ranking. Status symbols become emotional crutches. Without them, they feel invisible. So they tell themselves the story. If I rise in status, I become someone. That belief sustains the entire game. The invisible hierarchy humans create. Humans are constantly ranking each other. Richer versus poorer. More attractive versus less attractive. More successful versus less successful. But this ranking system is never formally agreed upon. It is collectively imagined. Everyone behaves as if it is real, so it appears real. This is why people feel threatened by someone's success, feel proud about luxury purchases, feel inferior around wealthy people. All reactions come from the story of status. The strong person does not need the story. A person who is internally grounded does not require external markers to feel significant. They care about things that are intrinsically real: skill, mastery, clarity, understanding, creation. Their sense of worth does not fluctuate based on what someone else bought, who got promoted, who has more followers. So they simply do not participate in the story. The paradox. Ironically, many people who stop chasing status end up gaining it. Why? Because they focus on substance instead of signaling. They build expertise, businesses, ideas, influence. But by then, the game has already lost its grip on them. So, status only matters to those who need others to tell them who they are. The moment a person becomes internally clear about themselves, the story collapses. And when the story collapses, the game ends. Why status matters to most people? Most people do not know who they are, so they look outward for answers. They watch how people treat them. If people admire them, I must be important. If people ignore them, maybe I'm not enough. If someone has more memory, he must be better. Their identity becomes a mirror made of other people's opinions. This is why status matters. Because status is simply a signal that others approve of you. More approval, higher status. Less approval, lower status. So the person who depends on approval becomes a slave to status. The invisible question inside every status game. Underneath every status chase is a quiet question. Am I someone? A bigger car tries to answer it. A promotion tries to answer it. More followers try to answer it. But these answers never last because the question itself was never solved. It only gets temporarily silenced. Soon the mind asks again, and the chase continues. What internal clarity means? When someone becomes internally clear, something changes. They understand themselves through direct experience, not through comparison. They know what they value, what they want to build, what matters to them, what does not matter. Their identity no longer depends on external reflection. It comes from inner certainty. When that happens, something interesting occurs. The mind stops asking, where do I stand compared to others? Because the comparison itself becomes irrelevant when the story collapses. The moment you see the status is just a social narrative, its emotional power weakens. You may still see luxury cars, rich people, attractive people, powerful people, but the internal reaction disappears. Not because you are suppressing it, but because the mind no longer interprets these things as proof of human worth. They become just facts. A car is a car, money is money, a title is a title. The story of superiority and inferiority dissolves when the game ends. Most people live inside an endless competition. Who is ahead? Who is behind? Who is admired? Who is ignored? It's like running on a treadmill. Even when they win, the race continues. But the moment the story collapses, something radical happens. You stop running, not because you lost, but because you realized there was never a real race. And in that moment, the game ends. The quiet truth behind it all. A man who needs status is asking the world, tell me that I matter. A man who has seen clearly no longer asks, not out of arrogance, but because he already knows who he is. And once that happens, no car, no title, no applause can add even 1 millimeter to his worth. Most people are constantly asking the world who they are, not verbally, but through their behavior. They ask through signals. Do you admire me? Do you respect me? Do you think I'm successful? Am I ahead of others? A man buys a luxury car. Part of the purchase may be practical, but another part quietly asks the world, do I look like someone now? A man posts achievements online. A woman dresses in a certain way. A professional announces a promotion. None of these things are inherently wrong, but beneath them often lies a silent request. Please confirm that I matter. Why this asking never ends? Because the world cannot answer that question permanently. Today people admire you, tomorrow they admire someone else. Today you are ahead, tomorrow someone suppresses you. So the validation fades and the mind asks again. This is why status chasing becomes endless. The answer never stays. What it means to see clearly. To see clearly is to recognize something simple but profound. Your worth was never determined by external signals, not by possessions, admiration, beauty, status, achievements. These things may change how society treats you, but they do not change what you fundamentally are. The moment a person truly understands this, not intellectually but deeply, something inside relaxes. The constant asking stops. Why it is not arrogance? From the outside, it can look like arrogance because the person is no longer seeking approval. They are not trying to impress. They are not explaining themselves constantly. But internally, it is not pride. It is simply clarity. Arrogance says, I am better than you. Clarity says, I don't need to be better than anyone. One comes from ego, the other comes from freedom. What happens when a man stops asking? His attention shifts. Instead of managing appearances, he focuses on substance. Instead of impressing others, he builds real capability. Instead of comparing himself, he deepens his own path. He may still achieve great things, but they are no longer attempts to prove something. They become expressions of who he already is, the essence. A man who has not seen clearly asks the world, tell me who I am. A man who has seen clearly simply lives. Because the question itself has disappeared. And when the question disappears, so does the need for the world's answer. In the end, status was never a real thing. It was a story whispered from one insecure mind to another. A story that said, if others admire you, you matter. If others envy you, you have won. And so people build their lives around symbols. Bigger houses, louder cars, more titles, more applause. Not because these things fulfilled them, but because they hoped the world would finally say, you are someone. But the world never truly says it. It only echoes for a moment. Then the silence returns, and the chase begins again. The man who sees clearly realizes something simple. Nothing the world gives him can define him. Not admiration, not envy, not status. So he quietly steps away from the theater. While others compete for the loudest applause, he turns towards something far more real, understanding mastery, and truth. And in that quiet place where no audience exists, a strange freedom appears. The freedom of a man who no longer needs the world to tell him who he is.